Tracey, Hahn, Burkett, to be followed by Anthony Zoll.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak today. My name is Tracey Hahn Burkett. I live in Bow, and I'm the leader of the Kent Street Coalition's Working Group on Gun Violence Prevention. I'm here today as a citizen, as a mom, as an advocate with prior experience working on this issue. I'm voluntarily devoting an enormous portion of my time every week to stopping gun violence, to stopping the flow of blood. Too often we see these things happening and we clap our hands over our mouths and we say, how awful. And then we turn away as though there's nothing we can do about it. And I've heard a lot of talk here about how New Hampshire is really safe and all of the things that are happening in other places. And while to a certain extent, yes, New Hampshire it is pretty safe. But I think we all do ourselves and the citizens of the state a disservice if we just say, great, everything's fine here, everything that's bad happens in other places, and we're just going to assume that nothing bad's ever going to happen here, particularly when there have been incidences here, when there have been a number of close calls in New Hampshire, and the fact is, we've gotten lucky. That doesn't mean that crime can never happen in New Hampshire. So we can do something about violence here in the state of New Hampshire. We can enact reasonable measures that don't infringe on federal or state constitutional rights of gun owners, and that will make a measurable difference in reducing body count. HB109, closing some of the loopholes in our background check system for firearms purchases, would not take away anyone's rights. And I began to question my own sanity a little bit listening, because we do have background checks. We do have a system in this state. What we're talking about here is closing some of the loopholes in the existing system. But it wasn't really sounding that way. It would safeguard the rights of both gun owners and the general publics. And I really want to note the point that neither our federal nor our state constitution sets forth an absolute right to bear arms that supersedes all other rights. Where public safety is a concern, the state has a right, you could even call it an obligation, to come into the situation to protect citizens' lives. Background checks work. Since 1994, background checks have blocked more than 3.5 million sales to prohibited purchasers. Now, I know some will say that not all gun crimes have been blocked, or all criminals. Tens of thousands of Americans still die each year from gun violence. This is true. But if we're waiting for the single perfect solution that catches 100% of gun deaths before they happen, then we will never do anything at all. How many more people would be dead without the background checks? Let's take what works and extend it to gun shows and online purchases so that those easy loopholes aren't just sitting there waiting to be exploited. Finally, expanding and tightening background checks on gun purchases even works in concert with something I've been hearing for decades. It's a gun lobby's well-known argument with regard to gun issues. Guns don't kill people, people kill people. Conducting these background checks on purchasers of dangerous machines, and that factually is what guns are. They're dangerous machines. Sorry, I've scribbled my notes here, so. To make sure that they don't get sold to someone who isn't fit to own such a machine, even though the majority of gun owners do use them responsibly, makes such clear sense as a matter of public safety. It's frankly astonishing that we haven't closed these loopholes already. The American people have already recognized the plain common sense value of background checks. Over 90% of Americans support them. That sort of bipartisan consensus in this era of extreme partisan bitterness is a clear indication of public intent. People have had enough innocent bloodshed. Please, members from both parties, Act with the interests of your constituents in mind and vote ought to pass on HB 109.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Do you have any testimony to give to the clerk?
I've done a lot of scribbling, so I can email it to you.
Croc TV.